Good afternoon. My name is Taylor Ingram, Field Service Engineer here at Chart Industries. Today we're going to talk about preventative maintenance on the SeQual Eclipse machine. Preventative maintenance on the Eclipse should be done at a minimum of once annually on all Eclipse concentrators. That's once a year preventative maintenance should be done. And again, that's the minimum recommended schedule. If you have one in a dirty operating environment that's used more frequently, maybe used outside and things like that, depending on the environment it's operated in, maintenance may be required more often than that. But as a minimum requirement, regardless of hours, these should be done once a year. So in order to do preventative maintenance, you're going to need a couple things. As far as first thing, you'll need an ESD mat for anti-static. There are circuit boards inside of the Eclipse. If you don't ground yourself properly using the ESD mat, you can fry those circuit boards out. So you do want to have an ESD mat. The way the ESD mat works is one end here has this little clip that will go onto something metal to ground it, and then you attach this wrist piece to yourself to ground you so that static electricity you produce doesn't get to the circuit boards inside the Eclipse. So you have to have an ESD mat. As far as tools are concerned, very minimal what's required to do preventative maintenance. Basically, you'll need a number 1 Phillips screwdriver, preferably one with a magnetic tip for removal of screws. And you'll need a pair of wire cutters to cut zip ties that secure the tubing inside of the machine. And the rest of the tools that you need are available in our preventative maintenance kit that's offered for the Eclipse devices. Okay, so let's talk about the contents inside of the preventative maintenance kit and the parts that have to be replaced inside of the Eclipse. To do preventative maintenance, you replace 3 filters on the Eclipse. The first filter is the one external to the machine that goes in the back of the cabinet, and that's the air intake filter, these little foam pads. If you order one of our preventative maintenance kits, you will get 2 of these foam pads, the air intake filters. The reason for that is cleaning of these filters. Once a week, these filters should be cleaned by the patient with soap and water. The reason that we provide 2 is because a wet filter can't be installed back into the machine, and the machine can't run for more than 30 minutes without a filter inside of it. So we provide 2, so while one's being cleaned, the other one can go inside of the device. So that's the first filter that has to be changed as part of preventative maintenance. The second filter that has to be changed is what we call a compressor intake filter. This is a white filter like this with 2 barbs on each end, and we'll see this when we go inside the machine, but this has to be changed annually as part of preventative maintenance as well, the compressor intake filter. And the last filter you'll have is a HEPA filter. Now the preventative maintenance kit comes with 2 different HEPA filters. You will only use one inside of the Eclipse. This larger one that's shaped like a disc, that will be used if your HEPA filter is external to the product tank. And the smaller one here will be used if your HEPA filter is internal to the product tank. And again, you'll see the differences when we open the machine up. But these are your HEPA filters. One or the other, you will not use both. So when you order the kit, you can keep the other one for your stock and only use one. Other items inside of the kit, if you have the HEPA filter that's internal to the product tank, there's also 2 O-rings that secure it, and the preventative maintenance kit comes with those O-rings. So those are the 3 filters that have to be changed as part of preventative maintenance. The air intake filter, the compressor intake filter, and the HEPA filter. The air intake filter is external on the back of the cabinet, and the compressor and HEPA filter are internal. So you do have to open the machine up to change those. And we'll get into that in just a minute. The last thing you have to do as part of preventative maintenance is change the 9-volt battery. 9-volt battery on the Eclipse, its purpose is to power these lights on top and the audible buzzer and alarm. This battery should also be changed once a year as part of preventative maintenance to ensure that it still has the charge and is still working properly. So your preventative maintenance kit will come with a standard 9-volt battery. It also comes with a foam pad. As you'll see when we open it up, the battery has a compartment. This foam pad secures the battery inside of the compartment and keeps it from rattling around and making a noise. And the last thing that comes in your preventative maintenance kit is 10 small zip ties or wire ties. Purpose for this, as you note on these filters, they do have tubing that has to be connected on both ends of this one. On the HEPA filter as well, tubing, and some other places you'll have to remove tubing once you get inside of the machine. And every tubing connection inside of the Eclipse needs to be secured with a zip tie. So if you get the preventative maintenance kit, we also give you 10 zip ties to secure all of the tubing. So that's all the components that come in a preventative maintenance kit and all the tools that you're going to need to do maintenance. Again, maintenance should be done once a year, once annually on the Eclipse concentrators, regardless of hours. This is essential to keeping it operating properly and operating up to specification. So now let's open up the machine and take it apart. Okay, so now we've got the Eclipse set up on the ESD mat ready to go. First step, make sure you do take the battery out and that you put it off to the side while you're doing the preventative maintenance. In order to remove the case of the Eclipse, you tilt it over on its back, and there's 10 screws in the back of the Eclipse. They're going to be removed using a number 1 Phillips head screwdriver, preferably one with a magnetic tip to help get the screws out. Okay, once you have all 10 screws removed, tilt the Eclipse over on its front and lift straight back to remove the front case from the back case. You'll note that there's 2 things connecting the 2 cases together in kind of a clamshell enclosure. Number 1 is this ribbon cable right here, and number 2 is the tubing that goes to the oxygen outlet. So you're going to need to remove both of those to completely separate the front case. Then the front case can be taken off to the side, and you can begin the preventative maintenance. Now let's locate the filters that need to be changed as well as the 9-volt battery. Alright, so the 2 filters you'll be changing. Number 1 is the HEPA filter over here. This is the disc-shaped filter underneath the product tank. The second filter is the compressor intake filter over here to the side of the compressor. And the third thing you'll want to locate is the 9-volt battery, which you'll also be changing. It's down here at the very bottom of the machine. Let's start with the HEPA filter. As you can see underneath the product tank, the tubing is wrapped several times and zip tied together inside of here. My suggestion to you is actually leave that zip tied together and just pull it all up as one assembly. And then you can slide the new HEPA filter once you've changed this one out. So it's secured on both sides by zip ties. Simply cut those. And then you can remove the HEPA filter. Again, make sure that you know which side was the inlet and which side was the outlet. To be sure, on the outer ridge here that says inlet. Probably hard to see on the video here, but it does say inlet on this outer ledge. You want to make sure that that's the side coming out of the bottom product tank. So the tubing coming out of the bottom, which is this here, would be the side that's your inlet. So you want to attach that there. Make sure it's firmly on there. We'll connect it again with zip ties later to secure it. And then this would be your outlet connection here. Now take 2 of the zip ties that you got in your maintenance kit. Secure the tubing onto both ends of the HEPA filter. And cut off the excess. Again, be careful while you're doing this that you don't kink any of this tubing, as it is wrapped around several times. You do want to be cautious not to kink any of the tubing. If you do that, that can lead to block flows or things like that. So you want to be very careful while you're doing this part and installing the filter back. So now that we've secured both ends, if you look down here, I'll move this to the side, you can see that there is a little ledge or compartment that the filter actually slides down into. So we'll slide that down in there, make sure no tubing is kinked, and you kept it wrapped by not cutting these zip ties just as it was when you found it. So very easy to replace the HEPA filter. Next we'll move on to the compressor filter over here to the side of the compressor. In order to access it well, you will have to remove this electrical wire harness here where your external power plugs into. So if you remove the gasket, raise it, and this just lifts out. There's a little slot here that it goes into, and it just lifts straight out, and you can tilt it off to the side. And that gives you easy access to the compressor intake filter. Compressor filter, I'll raise it up here. Also secured on both ends by zip ties, so you want to cut those first. Pay attention on this one as well. The flow direction is important on this as well. Flow direction on this one, this greater diameter portion actually goes downward. And as I take this off, you'll also see that there is an arrow on the body of the filter. and that arrow needs to be pointing downward towards the body of the Eclipse. So remove the old compressor filter. Take your new compressor filter out of the maintenance kit. Again, note that the arrow, and be sure it's pointing down. Install the tube on one end and the tube on the other end. And again, you'll want to secure both of these connections with zip ties. Once we have the compressor filter secured in there with the zip ties, we will want to reassemble the wire harness and put it back where it goes. Again, there is the little slot that it goes into. The other thing you want to note is there is text on this, and there is an orientation. So you want to be sure that the text will be facing upward when you actually put it inside of the Eclipse. The other thing you want to look for is there is a little rubber O-ring around it as well. You want to be sure that that's installed. This is a good time just to check that while you have the machine open. Slide it in there, the gasket, make sure it's back in place where it belongs, and now you've changed both internal filters. Last thing you want to do is change the 9-volt battery as well. 9-volt battery located down here, and its connection is the same as any 9-volt battery. Just take it off. The other thing you may want to do on this is the maintenance kit does come with a little foam pad. Probably difficult to see on this shot, but if you look down here, there is a foam pad inside of the compartment for the 9-volt battery that secures it, keeps it from rattling around. If that's damaged in any way, it does come with a new foam pad that you can replace that with, or if one is missing. And this is simply adhesive. You would peel it off and then install the new foam pad. This one's still intact, so I'll leave it on, and we'll just install the new 9-volt battery. Hook it back up. No need to disconnect any of these wires. Just make sure it's plugged in to the ports on top of the 9-volt and slide it right back into its compartment in the case. Okay, now that we've changed the filters and the 9-volt battery, it's time to reassemble the case. Again, make sure the ribbon cable plugged into the top of the circuit board here at the pin connection. It just slides back into place. And this tubing here connects to the outlet. Our suggestion at this point is that before you actually put the screws inside of the case, you simply close it, attach an external power source, and let it run for just a few minutes, just to be sure that you haven't kinked any tubing or left anything disconnected and nothing alarms. So that would just be a good suggestion at this point. After you let it run for just a few minutes, just to be sure that there are no alarms, that you haven't kinked tubing, then you can go ahead and reassemble the case. Again, the screws, 10, all along the outer diameter, installed with a number 1 Phillips head screwdriver. Now I will note that you can use a drill or a torque wrench if you'd like, but you need to make sure that it's slow turning and calibrated. And the torque specifications for the outer case are actually 5 inch-pounds. So you install all 10. So now that we've completed the case installation of the screws, the last part of preventative maintenance is to replace the air intake filter here on the back. Again, this just goes in the compartment. So you just remove the old one. There is no direction or anything like that. Just remove the old one and put the new one inside of the compartment on the back. And now you've completed preventative maintenance on your Eclipse. Again, remember this should be done once a year as a minimum requirement.